I'm willing, yes. I could go ahead and waive the change fee as an exemption due to the schedule change. Okay, and then you can either keep it uncoached without difference in miles, or you can upgrade it to business. We will only collect an additional 20,000 miles.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Abroaders Travel Podcast, your weekly meetup with thousands of entrepreneurs, hustlers, creators, nomads, ninjas, wanderers, and world changers, all seeking to build the skills and connections to live a life without borders. If you want to learn more about what we do or download our entire podcast archive, check out the website, abroaders.com. Happy Wednesday morning and welcome to the 42nd episode of the Abroaders Podcast. I'm Eric. AJ is chilling in Barcelona and taking a well-deserved mini vacation. Today, I'll be adding my thoughts on AJ's two-part series on travel and entrepreneurship and diving into the details on my 47-day Europe trip that cost less out of pocket than the average monthly rent in a big city. And of course, sharing the travel hacking insights on how you can leverage your miles and points to do the same. I'll also cover some travel tools that can make it easier to find your way around in a foreign country. In the news and updates section, I'll be covering some good credit card offers that you should consider and a new manufactured spending opportunity that may be even better than the Amazon payments hack that went away this week. Show notes are at abroaders.com/Europe. So before I get into the content for today's episode, I want to go back and talk a little bit about last week and the week before. AJ did a two-part series on entrepreneurship and travel. I thought they were some of the best episodes that we've put out so far with the Abroaders podcast. So if you haven't yet checked it out, I highly encourage you to go back and download and listen to episodes 40 and 41. AJ, in the first segment, talks about deciding how much of a priority is travel, choosing who you want to work with, and gets into a discussion about going solo or working with a business partner, and then creating your offer. In the second episode, he gets into how you can maintain and grow your business while abroad, some potential booby traps to watch out for, and setting yourself up with a good work environment and making sure you've got tools in place to maintain communication with your clients back home. And then last talks about some big-time contacts and how travel can be leveraged to really give you big opportunities to grow your business. So I have to say I was a little bit bummed not to be a part of those episodes. I think there were some really good points that AJ brought up. And so I kind of went through and listened to them and wanted to contribute a couple of things myself. In the first episode, one of the big points that AJ brought up that I would have liked to have been on the show to talk with you guys about is the strategic partnership versus a trust partnership. And so what I mean by that is AJ mentioned that when we started our first company around marketing and developing websites for small business, we didn't really have a core competency in that skill set. And I think that comes back to the question of partnership in that when you're picking someone to work with, it can be a huge advantage to pick a partner that has a different skill set than you. And so AJ and I came to the table both having a lot of experience with sales and knowing that we could sell websites. But I think it would have been a huge advantage if AJ or I had picked a different partner who was, able to bring that other skill set to the table. We maybe would have been able to grow much faster or provide higher quality service to our customers and done a better job at the onset. But the counterpoint to that is that it is really important to be able to work with someone that you trust and that you work well with. And so I think AJ and my partnership was definitely one of convenience and trust, that we knew each other and we're on the same page with our vision and goals. So I thought AJ did a really nice job talking about that. And I guess I wanted to just contribute, don't get hung up on that. If you're getting ready to get started, yes, we didn't have a ton of background in web development and marketing when we started out, but successful entrepreneurship is about developing marketable skills. AJ worked his ass off to learn the basics of programming and code and website best practices. And so, even though we didn't necessarily come to the table with either one of us having that skill set, the process of developing those skills was really important for us to be able to grow as business people and entrepreneurs. And so if you're kind of in that situation where you're not sure where to go with your first business, don't not get started because you don't think you have a marketable skill set. that's part of the challenge of entrepreneurship, is that you have to build that. And so, I just want to encourage you guys to not, get hung up on that. I think that inaction is probably your biggest enemy when you're getting started. And so, while AJ was working on developing skills with coding and really learning the background and the underlying framework of the business, I was working on developing skills around building processes and automating tasks and hiring and expanding our team. And so all of those things, we brought sales to the table. We knew we could sell websites, but in order to really do a good job and grow our business, we needed to develop those other skill sets. And so the bottom line is that there's always going to be something missing. There's always going to be that next challenge. And that's the core fundamental part of entrepreneurship that you have to master. The other thing that you need to keep in mind is that there's a difference between being an expert in your industry, which is ultimately the true goal. If you're going to build a scalable business, you need to be really good at what you're doing. But that's not the same thing as being an expert relative to your target customer. And so the reason that we were successful, and when I say success, I mean that we achieved location independence, which was our primary goal. And so we didn't happen to be extremely good at building websites at the beginning, but we did know a lot more about online marketing and websites than the average business owner. And so a lot of our early clients were gym owners or restaurant owners and folks that really didn't know much about business online at all. And so we were able to develop a core skill set that allowed us to really deliver value to those folks, even though we weren't anywhere near the top of online marketers. We could still really help those people. And so I think that's a really important thing to consider, is that somewhere along the path to becoming extremely good, to becoming truly remarkable at your business, you can fuel that process by being incrementally better than your target customer, and you can still deliver value even if you're not the best by helping someone that really needs it, that doesn't have any idea of how to set up an email list or how to write sales copy. So I guess the key takeaway here is not to get discouraged and allow inaction and just complacency to set in. If you've got an idea and you have the drive and interest in developing that skill set, go seek out people that need that skill and start working with them. And that's really the best way, I think, to validate your business and find out if it's something that really is deserving of your long-term time and attention. The second segment in episode 41, AJ gets into some of the nuts and bolts of actually traveling and working. And he brings up some really, really good points. Our first trip was less than 4 months into our business. We went to Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, and spent 8 weeks abroad. And some of the things that he mentioned about, VPN and having a setup where we could access our PayPal and our financial accounts, and we could communicate with our customers, things like not having good Wi-Fi and trying to work, out of a hostel, were all extremely big challenges for us and things that we didn't really expect. So I think those are really important things to consider. And again, you're not going to have all the answers. The path to getting good at these sorts of things is to try and to actually have that experience and sort of the trial by fire. The other thing that AJ mentioned sort of at the end of the episode that I think was really important is the way that we've been able to leverage our travel for connecting with other entrepreneurs and making contacts. And I think he even mentioned the tool that I use for kind of databasing and keeping track of connections that I make abroad is Evernote. And the great thing about Evernote is that you can tag every note with different items. And so I'll tag, something as business contact, maybe add a tag for their skill set. So if they're a programmer or a web developer or, a marketer, and then also the geographic location, both where I met them and where they're based. And that has paid huge dividends. So I just wanted to revisit that because I think it's a really important point that you guys don't want to skip over. And in fact, I'm going to get into a little bit more detail as I recap my most recent trip in today's episode. I met a really cool guy named Felix in Florianopolis, Brazil last year. And we hung out, had a couple of beers, and really got to be close friends. and he lives in Berlin. And so on this trip, I was able to go back and reconnect with Felix, stayed at his place for a couple of days, and had a totally different experience in Berlin this time than AJ and I had last year when we came to visit. And the reason was that I had a local host. Felix knows all the clubs. He knows where to go at night. He knows tons of different places, interesting sights to see around the city. And so my experience was completely different. And I just realized, how much we missed the first time in Berlin. So I really encourage you guys to, while you're traveling, take advantage of that, make those connections, and, try and follow up whenever possible. The other thing you guys might want to check out is there's a blog post that I'm going to link in today's show notes that talks about how you can use Facebook to search out and find your connections in a city. So as you're building up that Evernote database, or however you want to keep track of people that you're meeting along your travels, you can also use Facebook to search out and find friends and also friends of friends that are located in cities that you're going to be traveling to. So there's quite a bit of detail about how that actually works and how you can conduct that search on Facebook. But the main idea is that if you've got a connection that has lived in a place, you can ask them for an introduction to some of their friends. And even if you don't happen to know somebody in Berlin, you're going to possibly be able to find a friend that does, that can introduce you. And, at the very least, you can make a new friend, go out and grab some beers, and best case scenario, maybe have a free place to stay, maybe have somebody to show you some of the cool places around their city. So as I mentioned at the top of the episode, AJ has been shouldering a bunch of the work and produced a couple of great episodes. I'm checking in with you guys today from Detroit, Michigan. I just got in on a flight on Lufthansa in business class from Frankfurt, Germany, and just wrapping up a 47-day trip through Europe, including Italy, Spain, Greece, Austria, and Germany. So before we get into the rest of the content for the episode today, I wanted to give you guys a quick recap of sort of my expenses across this 47-day trip, give you a quick breakdown of the flights, how much it cost, how many miles I spent, and also accommodation, because this trip was really, really cheap. Considering that I was out for over a month and a half, it really didn't come out to a whole lot of financial expense, thanks to the miles that I've accumulated through credit card signups and optimized spend for our business and for my personal expenses. So I want to kind of break this down. The main travel from the United States to Europe and back was booked using United Mileage Plus miles, and that included a flight from the U.S. to Italy, and we stopped in Rome and then flew back with an open jaw. So flew into Rome and out of Genoa, and then with a stopover in Spain. And so remember, United's routing rules are really flexible, and that stopover open jaw combo can allow you to see two different cities at your destination. The original price was 60,000 miles and $146. The retail price of that ticket at the time I booked was almost $2,000. So I maybe could have done better if I had some patience and really spent some time looking. But, depending on stopovers and open jaw, stuff like that, those tickets can be kind of expensive. So I certainly saved quite a bit of money there. And then once I got to Europe, I was able to take advantage of some of the European low-cost carriers. So I met up with my girlfriend who came from Brazil, and we flew from Barcelona to Athens, Greece, and paid for that ticket on Vueling, which is a partner of Iberia, who's a member of the Avios program. But that was a situation where it wasn't worth using points. It was just a really cheap flight. I think it cost about $100, and so we opted to pay for those tickets. And then we also paid for the tickets from Berlin back to Barcelona. The total cost there was about $210 for all the paid flights within Europe. And then we also flew from Mykonos, which is one of the islands off of Greece, to Vienna, stopped over for a couple days, and then continued onwards to Berlin. That was an award ticket, which cost $60 in taxes and 12,000 Avios points per person. So again, saved a few $100s on tickets there by burning some Avios. Remember that the key with Avios is that if you can find direct flights, those are going to be the best deal, because they have a distance-based award chart that's priced by segment. So it basically takes the number of actual miles that you're traveling from one airport to the other and calculates the number of Avios points that you're going to need based on that. So the last part to this trip, and I'm going to actually share a bit of audio with you guys in just a second, I was able to get the change fee waived by United. and was able to upgrade my return flight for only an additional 20,000 United points. And really, it was a huge win because I was able to get into business class instead of economy on the way home. And I also cut my total travel time down from 20 to 12 hours. And so the big deal here is that a lot of times when you make your booking with points, there's not going to be the best availability because airlines want to hang on to those seats that they think they have a chance of selling. And so in this case, United didn't have access to the seats on the flight that I ended up taking because Lufthansa was trying to sell those business class tickets. But very close to departure, a couple of days before, I was able to make a change to my itinerary and avoid a couple of extra stopovers and cut a bunch of time off of my flight by making that change. And the reason that I was able to do it without paying United's $75 change fee is that there was a very, very slight schedule change. And so we've talked about this before, but it's really important to keep in mind. When an airline changes your itinerary, even if it's just by a few minutes, you have generally a good case to make to ask them to waive that change fee. In this case, my flight changed by a mere 25 minutes, but I was able to make a case that that was going to create a big inconvenience for me with my travel to Detroit, and United was able to waive the change fee, and at the same time, that extra availability that I mentioned opened up, and I was able to pay an extra 20,000 miles and book into business class. So just to kind of show you how that conversation went, I'm going to roll a recording of that for you right now.
Thank you for holding. This is Marge, supervisor. I believe I'm speaking with Eric.
Yeah, that's correct. Hi, how are you?
Doing well. Thank you. How about you?
I'm doing fine, thank you. Okay, so thank you so much for taking the call, Marge. So here's what happened. My original itinerary was supposed to get into Detroit at 9:25 p.m. There's a bus that leaves Detroit's airport that I need to take to Lansing, which is like a 2-hour drive. And the last one leaves right around 10 o'clock. And so the new itinerary is only going to be getting in at 9:50 is what I have on my reservation that I pulled up on United.com. And so that 25-minute delay, I'm traveling without any checked bags. So my plan was to get off the plane at 9:25 and be able to catch that last bus home at 10. And it's going to be a big problem for me to miss the last bus. If the flight arrives at 9:50, there's no way I'm going to be able to make it to the bus in 10 minutes. And so I wanted to see if you can waive the change fee. I found a great itinerary that's going to get me in earlier in the day on the 14th. And so I'd like to make that change, but I just would really like to avoid the fee because that schedule change definitely made my plans more difficult.
Okay. Can you give me then the details of the flight? Let me see what I can do about this.
Great. So the new flight is Lufthansa 1139, departs Barcelona at 6:55 a.m., arrives in Frankfurt at 9:05.
Frankfurt.
Yep. And then the connecting flight is at 10:50 a.m., and that's Lufthansa 442 from Frankfurt to Detroit.
This is October 14, you said?
Correct, yes. And I actually would like to book in business if possible and pay the additional miles.
Give me a moment, sir.
Okay, no problem.
All right, I found the flights available, sir, with Lufthansa. Lufthansa 1139, 6:55 a.m. to Frankfurt at 9:05, and then leaving Frankfurt 10:50 a.m. back to Detroit at 1:50 p.m. I'm willing, yes, I could go ahead and waive the change fee as an exemption due to the schedule change.
Okay.
So there will be difference in tax of $6.39.
Okay.
Okay, and then you can either keep it uncoached without difference in miles, or you can upgrade it to business. We will only collect an additional 20,000 miles.
Okay, that's great. Yep, and I will do the business. It's fine.
The business, okay. Let me have your credit card for the difference in tax then.
All right, so yeah, just a quick recap there. The key elements here are that you need to make a case that the change that happened is something that really, really inconvenience you. So it's in a case where it's more than a few hours, it's usually not a big deal at all. They'll often just waive that fee if you want to make the change. But in my case, it was only 25 minutes. And so what I did there is made the case that that 25 minutes was going to make it impossible for me to catch a bus that was going to take me home when I arrived at my destination airport. And so that, I think, was the key to getting that $75 fee waived. Hopefully that's helpful for you guys. The last thing I wanted to cover with this Europe trip is accommodation. Obviously, airfare is one of the biggest opportunities for saving money with points, but you should also be keeping in mind that hotels can be booked with points. There's a lot of credit cards out there that offer points for Hilton, Hyatt, Starwood Preferred Guest, Club Carlson, and IHG, International Hotels Group. So those are some of the big chains, and we're going to link in the show notes to maps provided by a really great blog called Travel is Free. The maps show each of the hotel categories and all the locations that they have globally so that you can actually just go through and sort and take a look at which hotels have which prices. So, if you're planning on traveling to Europe, you can check out your destination, see if one of the major chains has hotels in your city, and opt to potentially use some of your points to cover those stays. On this Europe trip, I didn't use very many points, but we did actually take advantage of the Club Carlson visa offered by U.S. Bank, which makes the last night of any award stay free. And so what that means is if you only book a 2-day stay, it's like buy one, get one free. So you pay in points for your first night and you get the second night free. So we did do that in Rome, stayed at the Radisson Blu in Rome, and that ended up being a really nice experience. I think the price was 38,000 Club Carlson points, and we ended up getting 2 nights for that and paid $0. So that was a really good win. The rest of the hotels I ended up booking mostly Airbnb accommodation in apartments, and then used Booking.com to get pretty cheap accommodation in hotels. Average cost per day for the trip was $23 for accommodation. Hotels came out to $24 for 14 different nights. Homes and Airbnb came out a little more expensive, $44 per day for 9 nights. And I also did a somewhat long-term lease for 24 days in Barcelona, which came out to $19 a day. As I mentioned at the top of the show, I just arrived in Detroit, and I am making a really tight turn. I'm here for only 18 hours. I picked a little bit of a layover so I could see my little sister for her birthday. Then I am headed to Bangkok for the Dynamite Circle's annual location-independent entrepreneur meetup. I'm really excited about this one, as this is going to be my first ever flight in first class. I have been very fortunate to book quite a bit of business class, but this is going to be the first time that I've ever flown first class. So I will be traveling on Cathay Pacific for the outbound leg and Japan Airlines on the way home. Booked this for $140 and 120,000 U.S. Airways dividend miles. So you guys can look forward to a full report on the outbound segment on Cathay Pacific. I'll be flying Detroit to Chicago, then Chicago to Hong Kong, and Hong Kong to Bangkok. One other thing I wanted to mention to you guys, this week I had 2 very close calls with almost missing a couple of flights. And so I wanted to share a couple of thoughts with you guys and tools that might help you avoid doing the same thing. So I had a flight from Vienna to Berlin, which was an award ticket booked through British Airways Avios on one of their partners, Air Berlin. And the reason that we almost missed the flight is that we missed a transfer while taking the train to the airport. There's a really nice public transportation system in Vienna, but we missed the stop where we were supposed to transfer to a different train that goes to the airport. And we ended up going about 6 or 7 stops in the wrong direction before realizing that we had messed up. And so, fortunately, I have T-Mobile, which gives unlimited 3G and text messages abroad. All you got to do is take your phone out of airplane mode when you hit the ground, and you should, within a few minutes, get connected to one of the local carriers. So, in our case, it helped a ton that I saw on the map that we were going in the complete opposite direction of the airport. But one thing that you can do to avoid this altogether is to plan out your route comprehensively before you leave. So assuming you've got Wi-Fi at the place you're staying, it's a really useful exercise to just take a careful look and make a note of the stops that you're going to need to change trains or anything that's important in your route to make sure you get to your destination. If you don't have Google Maps and you're not able to use GPS, that can definitely be a lifesaver. We're also going to link to a really cool application for iPhone, and I believe it's also available on Android, called All Subway, which is offline maps for a whole bunch of different cities. I think there's more than 50 cities in there, and it includes Vienna and Berlin and Barcelona, all three of which I used quite a bit. Even though I have that 3G, it's still nice to have offline maps, especially if you're in the subway. A lot of times you're not going to be able to get a connection anyways. So check out All Subway. It's 99 cents and was a great investment. The other one you might want to check out is Galileo. Thanks to Sean Ogle for bringing this one to my attention. Galileo lets you download full city maps. So instead of just having the subway system, you've got all the streets. Sometimes they've got bus routes on there, and it can be really helpful if you don't have a 3G connection to be able to just get a look at a map without having to connect to the internet. The second flight that I nearly missed was actually pretty embarrassing. I was on the way out of Berlin, headed back to Barcelona to catch my international flight home, and I actually took the cab to the wrong airport. So there's not really much you can say about this. I have no idea why I didn't actually check, but Berlin has more than one airport, like lots of cities, and I went to the wrong one. And fortunately, I was saved by a very, very cool Uber driver who didn't mind driving us an extra 40 minutes in the opposite direction at breakneck speed to catch our flight. So you should definitely check out Uber if you haven't done so already. I'm going to link up to that in the show notes as well. And if you haven't signed up before and you use this link, you and I will both get $30 in credit towards your next ride. It's not $30 in credit on your account, so you kind of want to try and take a longer ride with that first one, because once you use the credit, it's gone on the first ride. But as a huge value if you haven't signed up in the past, definitely check that out. Get signed up for an Uber account, and you basically can just call a taxi, tell them to come to exactly where you're going to be, and they will pick you up and take you wherever you want. And you don't have to worry about paying in cash because the application holds your credit card on file, and you just pay that way. Before we dive into the rest of the content, I want to share one quick insider tip on Berlin. This is one of the premier places in the world for electronic and deep house music, and the clubs are totally different than anything I've ever seen in other cities around the world. There's a lot of very underground, gritty type places where there's just no dress code, and in fact, you're probably more likely to get in if you look like you haven't showered in a couple of days. But the music is unbelievable if you're into the electronic music scene. One of my favorites that I checked out this past week is at Brunnenstrasse, number 70. The club is called Brunnen 70. We're going to link up to their website. You should know that there's absolutely no sign or indication that it's a club whatsoever. You just got to know where it is. So we're going to put a map up for you guys as well. And you hop into this giant freight elevator and head underground, and you'll hear music that sounds something like this. Time to get into some news and updates. It looks like the 70,000 point offer for the Ink Plus card is still available. At least at the time of recording, they hadn't pulled the link, so if you haven't gotten in on that yet, now is the time to do so. You should also know that Chase has reactivated the 50,000 point offer for the business card for Southwest. So the Chase Southwest business card is now again offering 50,000 points. And the personal one is still at 50,000 points. That one's been around for a while. But the reason that this is so important is that having both of those cards combined gets you up to 100,000 Southwest points. And you're eligible to earn a companion pass, which means that you can take a companion with you anywhere you travel for an entire year when you have the companion pass. And it only takes 110,000 points to get there. So if you get these two cards, you're going to be up to 100,000. And the key thing here is that you want to complete your spending requirement in 2015. Now, both of those cards have a deadline of 90 days, which means if you get the card now, you can cross that threshold sometime right before January 15th. So today's the 15th of October. And so if you go ahead and get those offers, you're going to want to try and time it so that you hit the bonus and earn those points in 2015. And the reason for that is if you qualify in 2015 for the companion pass, you're going to get unlimited use of that extra person that you can take along for free for all of 2015 and 2016. So it's a great deal, and I highly recommend you guys check it out if you're looking to travel domestically. Southwest doesn't have a lot of international routes. They do have a few to Mexico and the Caribbean, but if you're in the U.S. and looking for opportunities to reduce the cost of domestic travel, there aren't a whole lot of better options than the Southwest cards that are open right now. Another update that you guys want to be aware of is that American Express has released a new product that's similar to Serve and Bluebird, which is called Red Card, which is in affiliation with Target. And it looks like it may be possible to load directly with a credit card. The monthly limit is $5,000 and the daily limit is $2,500. So it looks like right now it may be possible to do up to $5,000 in manufactured spend per month with a credit card by visiting a Target location. So if you're US based and have access to a Target store nearby, you should definitely take a look at this. My advice is to sign up right away if you don't already have Bluebird or Serve, because you can't have Target's Red Card and also have a Bluebird or Serve account. So you got to pick one of the three. If you do already have one of these other accounts, you might want to take a few weeks to just kind of see how this plays out. It may be the case that they aren't going to continue to allow people to load the card with credit cards. But at the moment, it seems like it's possible. So if you don't already have Bluebird or Serve, I highly recommend getting a Red Card as soon as possible. The next bit of news is that Delta has decided to limit the number of Amex points that you can transfer into the SkyMiles program. So before, Amex was an unlimited transfer partner for Delta, meaning that you could move as many of your Amex membership rewards points as you wanted to Delta. And they have now announced that the maximum is going to be 250,000 per calendar year. So it may not be a huge deal for some people. That's a lot of points, since there's probably much better value in other transfer partners of Amex. So if I were you, I probably wouldn't be transferring that many membership rewards points over to SkyMiles anyways. But if you have a ton of Amex points, it can be a big blow, since some of Delta's pricing is pretty high. There are some tickets in business class that you can't even get for 200,000 miles. So the new limit is 250,000, and that comes on top of a couple of other bad announcements from Delta. One being that they're going to be awarding miles for numbers of dollars spent rather than numbers of miles flown. So we're going to keep an eye on that, but just wanted to make you guys aware that starting in 2015, you will only be able to transfer 250,000 Amex membership rewards points to the SkyMiles program. Last bit of news is that Amex is eliminating the 15,000 point bonus for spending 30,000 on the membership rewards gold card. So the gold card has both a business and a personal version, and before there was a spending threshold where if you spent $30,000 per year on the card, you would get an extra 15,000 points. Which was really valuable. It was one of the best things about the Amex Gold Card, in addition to the fact that you earn 3 points per dollar spent on airfare. So hopefully Amex is going to add some new benefits to the card, but for now, there will no longer be a 15,000 point bonus. That's it for today's episode. The international jam of the week is called Happy Endings. It is by a French DJ duo that goes by the pseudonym of Fall. I hope you guys enjoy this one. AJ and I will be back from Bangkok, Thailand next week, 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Wherever you are, travel safe. Hey Broaders, don't be shy. Hop over to the website and join our email list for exclusive travel hacking content. If you like what we're up to, the best way you can support the show is by leaving us a 5-star review on iTunes. Lastly, we would love to hear from you, so send your show feedback to Eric or AJ at abroaders.com. We will see you next week.